Testing 1 2. That's 1 2. Hey, thanks and welcome back to this video series I'm doing on Ionic Framework, React.js, AWS Amplify Datastore. In this video, we are going to implement storage, which basically means saving stuff in S3 on Amazon. But before we hop into that, if you're new, please make sure you come to my channel, check out the whole series. I have part 1 where I implement the authentication UI. I have part 2 where I start some basic CRUD stuff, and then now part 3 will focus on updating the updating entries and adding images. So this is a look at what the final application looks like. For those who've seen the view solution, this is basically the same as a view solution. We have cards that have an image, a title, description, an ID. You can edit these. So I can edit this entry. The thing that we're going to add in this video is I can clear out the image that's saved. I can select the new file to save. So let's take a look at this, what the screenshot is. Okay, and now you can open this up. You can save it. And you get a new image put in place here. You can also completely delete the objects, and you can see it's automatically updating everything. So this is what we're going to cover in this video. Hopefully this is something you find enjoyable. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get ready to go. All right, for this part of the application, we need to actually add storage to the back of my app. So here I am logging into my Amazon account. Let's just sign in. Since we are using the AWS Amplify console, I'm here in the console. This Ionic Amplify React is the app we're working with. We can open it up here, and then what we want to do is we want to open up the admin UI. So the admin UI is open. This is the data model we're working with. Right now we just have this placeholder here for image key. And what we want to do is actually set up storage. So we're going to go over here and configure storage. Use the Amplify CLI to add storage to your backend. Okay, let's go. So let's get my backend up here. Okay. Let's copy this. And let this run, do its magic. All right, so it pulled everything. So everything's fine. So the next step, it says to add storage. So let's copy that command. Let's come back to my terminal. We're going to add content. Please provide a friendly name to your storage that will use to label this category in the project. So we're going to call it images. Why not? Provide a bucket name. We'll just use that long bucket name. Auth users only should have access. And what kind of access do you want for authenticated users? Create, update, read, delete. They can have all access. You want to add a Lambda trigger? No. Amplify publish. Amplify push. Amplify push. And as you can see, storage has been there. It's going to do the create. So I'm going to do yes. Now it's going to update everything in the cloud. All right, so it looks like everything's been all set. Let's pop back over to our admin console. And let's go back to our content. Let's get refreshed, and then let's go to our storage. And then you can see deployed storage resources are here now. We click on images, and it'll take me to the S3 bucket so I can see where everything is. You can see I have no data, no images or anything here yet. But when we come back, you'll be able to see the images that are uploaded here, and we'll show that later. So now it looks like we have everything on our back end all set up for our application, and now it's time to switch back to the code and actually do something with all this. All right, now for the code. So the first thing we're going to do is try to add some logic behind this edit. What we need to do with edit, when I click edit, I need to take this object that's rendered here, and I need to pass it into my modal so that we have the fields appearing here and allow the user to update them and pass the changes back and save. So the first thing we want to do is, you can see if I look at I'm in my home component. My home component, looks like I already have some leftover code. In my home component, we have our entry form. And what we need to do in our entry form, we need to pass in some initial values. And so the initial values are going to come from our show modal object. And so as you can see, when we create a new one, we call set show modal, and we say is open is true and data is set to null. But on edit, we want to take the same code. So we're going to take this set show modal. We're going to come up here, and on edit, we're going to say open is true and data is going to be set to value. So what's going to happen is, let's just put a little comment on it. What'll happen is, if we go down here and you can see, where am I? So this is my list task. So let's go into list tasks. Inside of list tasks, we have this on edit callback. And so when someone clicks the on edit button, we call on edit. We pass a specific task object that we're working on. That goes back up to my home, and my home on edit, it calls edit data. And then if we go to edit data, we can see edit data. We're going to say is open is true to show the modal, and then we're going to pass the data into my modal. No, sorry, we're going to set this modal object to have the data value. So now what should happen is, now that set show modal is called, we go down to our modal. Our entry form is in our modal dialog here. And it has data that it gets passed into a new parameter that we have in our entry form called initial value. So let's go set that up on entry form. So let's go into entry form, and we have initial value set right here. So we need to add initial values, INIT initial values, as a new property that comes in. And what we want to do is, now when this thing's loaded, or when the component's loaded, so this is where we'll use our state stuff. So we'll use effect. So in our use effect function, what we're going to do here is, we only want it to run we want it to be dependent on initial values. So when initial values changes, we want to call this. And what we want to do is, we just want to set these references for the two fields in our modal, the title ref and description ref, to the initial values. And so we can do that. Let's see. We can do that with some simple, I don't want to say simple code. Well, it is simple code, but some basic assignment statements. So as you can see, what happens, we'll take the initial values title and set the title and set the description rep. Let's just see if we got that working so far. So you can see here when I click on edit, and so the information's coming in. And so let's see if I can fix that very quickly. Description, I input. Will that wrap for me? Actually, this should probably, let's see if I can just change Ion, if I can just change it to a text area without breaking anything. If not, we'll just leave it as an exercise for the user to work with it later. Let's see if that's going to work. Well, let's set some rows on this guy. Rows equals 3. There you go. So now we get the description passed in. All right, so now we have the data coming in. The next thing we want to do is, on save, we want to make sure we get the data passed back out and updated. So we have our handle save. Also, the difference that you'll notice is that when we're editing, we're passing in an object, and the object has an ID. The fact that it has the ID is going to be critical to how we manage this on the other side. So so we still have our closed modal. And I think what we want to do in our closed modal is, now, if we have an ID, we want to pass it. If we don't want to pass it. So let's just do that. So on closed modal here, we're going to say if an initial value says an ID, then pass the ID. So if we have an ID, that means we're editing. If we don't have an ID, that means we're creating. I'm going to use this on the other side. So now let's save this, and let's go back to home. And if we go to home, handle closed modal, and let's see where we are. We're in handle closed modal. Right now, all it's saying is if I have a value, then save, but we need to add a couple other checks here, right? So if value.id, then here, then this is update, else, save, right? And let's cut this out, let's put this in here. And so now here on update, so this is just save. Actually, this is just create. And this is update. So on update, we're going to leverage, once again, the Datastore API to handle our update. And so how do we do that? Let's see. It's a little bit different because basically what they're doing is they're copying the original object, and then you leverage the original model to update the changes. Datastore dot save, and then inside of this save, what you have to do something a little bit different. They have this. You have this ability to do this. So we say task copy of, and then you say the, so we're going to get the original, and then updated any, and then we're going to go from there to here like this. And then what you do inside here is we start setting our updated values. So updated dot title equals value dot title, and then the updated description in equals value dot description. And I'm missing the last part, which is we need to actually find the original object. And so what we're going to do in here is we get the object. So to kind of step you through this, we query to get the original object based on the ID. So now we have the original. If the original doesn't exist, then it returns, because that means we're not really updating anything. Then we take a copy of the original, and then we start to update the fields that we want to update, and then we save. And this should update our changes. So let's just give that a try and see if that worked. Let's save this. Let's cancel. Let's edit this one. Well, let's edit this one. This is 3 description. Let's make it longer. Save. So we updated the object. So now we have our basic. So we can create them, we can edit them, we can delete them. So the basic functionality for the task is done. Now we want to do the last part, which is implement the S3 bucket and saving to storage. So earlier on the video, you saw that I set it up. So all the infrastructure and everything is set up to save the images. Now I just need to add the UI to support it. So to implement that, let's go back to my entry form. And we're going to use the HTML5 hack. I won't call it hack, but basically HTML5 file input to allow you to select the file to upload. So let's add that code to my entry form. Where's my entry form? Once again, to kind of save some time, I'm going to paste some code and then just kind of explain what's going on. So here is get file. Let's comment that out, and then down in here, let's add some of this code. Let's make some room for it. So we have a label. And so what we want to display in the label is we want to display the current file, the name of the current file if there's one selected. So I'll add the variables later. So current file, if current file exists, then current file name, int file.name, otherwise null. And let's do this. Okay. So it's complaining it doesn't have current file. So that's what the label is going to be. We don't need this text area anymore, but what we're going to have instead of this text area is we're going to have an input. And so let's get this input. And let's put this in a paragraph so we can get it looking a specific way. Okay. So what this is saying, I'm going to get a reference to this input. It's going to be called file ref. This is the type select file. I want the display to be hidden, and when I change the file, I want to kind of set my state variable current file. So let's create that now so we can get rid of these errors. So we're going to go up here, and we're going to say const current file. I've got my T, current file, and then set current file. This equals use state, and we're going to say any and null. Okay, and then let's add the ref for the file. for the input file. And we're going to call this file ref. And we're going to set this to null. Okay. So that's going to give us access to the file object. To the file input element. So here we are. So let's just kind of fix some of our errors. And so let's go over what we've done now. So when you, well, let's add the last piece. The last piece is we're going to add an Ionic button in there. And we want to manage some different states of the buttons. So I'll paste some code in again and kind of explain what's going on. So what we're saying here is that if I have a file, then we have a button called clear, which allows you to kind of clear the current file out. So that's if I don't want to save a file. If I don't have a current file associated with this object, with this model, then we render a button called select file. When you click that button, it gets the reference from this hidden input field, and then it calls a click method on it, which will provide the dialog for you. And then once you get the dialog, if you select the file, we'll set the current file based on the event that comes back. And that current file, the last thing we want to do is this current file object, if it's set, we want to pass it back when the modal is closed. So let's add the code in here for that. And that's pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is pass back a variable called file, and it will pass back whatever's in current file, either null or the actual file. So let's save that. And I think we're good. Let's see if we get the UI looking the way we want to do. Let's start with new, because we'll focus on edit later. So I can select the file. And so you can see it has the file name here, and I can clear it out, which will null it, so I can select the file. But what we want to do is let's test to make sure we're getting our data back. So let's go back to home, and on handle close modal, and let's just debug here. Okay. Let's cancel this. Let's kind of open this up. And let's select the file. And let's save. And as you can see, we hit my breakpoint in here, and this is the value we get. So we get the data back from the form, and we get the file. This is the object that we want to upload and save. So now that we know that we're getting the data passed back, let's go back. Now we're back inside of home, and let's add the code to actually upload the image. So how do you upload the image? So the first thing we need to do is we need access to the storage API. So let's add that. And now what we want to do is let's go down here into my value. And so I'm going to set this up to support creating a new image, but also if you're editing, you need the ability to delete the old image and add the new image that needs to be associated with the model. So I'm going to put some code in that will handle both scenarios. So let's go back to my home component. Okay. So if I have, so this is update. We're going to start with create first. So the first thing we want to do inside of this is we're going to say let file response. This is response you get from actually saving the storage. So we're going to start off with this any equals null. So that's the default set, because you might not have an image to upload. So we want to be able to account for that. So what we're going to say here is that if value file, so if I have a file object that needs to be saved, then I want to save that first. And so we're going to use this file response equals await storage. And then for storage, we want to put, and that's going to put what we want to save, and then we need to pass some values into that. And the first value is going to be what our key is. And what I've done is I've encoded the file name as the key. Probably could be something a little bit different, and I can think of some scenarios where you want that to be different, but for this example, that's fine. And then you actually pass in the object of the file. And so that's value file. Okay, and then that gets you the response. And why is this complaining? Dollars assigned a value but never used. Oh, because then what we want to do is on this response is you get the key, and what you want to do with the key is that's what you want to add here. Image key is assigned to file key. Okay. And that should be enough to save the image. So let's format this. And so this first part here checks to see if you have a file, and if you have a file, it saves it to storage. Then the next part here is then if you have an image key, it takes that key and it assigns it and associates that image with this specific task. So let's cancel. Oh, this is still caught up in my broken in my debug. So let's do an empty cache and refresh. Let's I removed my breakpoint. So let's let this go again. Okay, so let's create a new one. Has image ppn has image, and I spelled that wrong. Script ION has image. Selected image upload. Let's use this screenshot again, and let's save it. And has image. So we can see that the image is saved, but now let's, for the real process, go back to our console. Let's look at our data, which I think is, well, first let's look at our storage, then our images, and let's, is it refreshing? And let's look in our folder, and you can see it saved that screenshot. And then, so that we know we stored it in our bucket, but now let's go back to our admin and look at our content. And you can see it has associated, this is from an earlier test. You can see that it has added the image key to our specific entry, which is what we wanted. So before I show how to edit it, let's kind of clean up the UI to actually render this image. So let's go back here, and to get the image rendered, we're going to update our list tasks component. And the whole idea is to get this card structure like we had in the, like we showed in the demo, and also we did in our view application. So we're going to make some changes here to, instead of rendering an item, to actually render a card. This is mostly Ionic stuff, so it'll be a flurry of cutting and pasting. So please just bear with me, and then I'll walk you through the changes that I made. So the first thing we want to do is we need to change this item to a card. So let's place that. Also in cards, everything is wrapped in that card content. So let's do this ion card content, and then it should be ion card. So let's save that. So let's import these guys, add all missing imports. Come on. So what's in it, like ion item, ion list? Let's just ion card content. Let's add those two. We've taken out the item, so let's remove the ion item. Let's format this guy. See what we got so far. All right, so we're getting there. So we got the basic part of the card. The next thing is that we're going to have to add an image. We'll circle back around to that later. We have our text wrap. We have our buttons. Let's push these. Let's clean these buttons up a bit and push them to the edge. So this is what this code does. Let's get by buttons. So this is going to float the buttons to the right, put some padding around them, and then shrink the size of the buttons so they fit a little bit better. So you see their buttons a little bit smaller and they're pushed to the right. So that's what we want, and everything's in the card. Now the last thing we need to do is we want to add an image to the top. I mean, we want to render the image that are associated with these objects. So to do that, we're going to go right inside this card content, and here I'm going to create a div, and then we're going to, because I know we need some styling on this, so set to style with auto, so we're going to render an image in here. And then we need to create a new component, which I'm calling image, IMAGE render. And for that component, we need to pass the image key, image key, and that will be t dot t, because I might not have an image. Image key. which is the key that's part of that object. And then let's close this guy out. And then now we need to actually add this component. And for now, I'm just going to add it right here in the bottom. So we're saying file component, and then image under ER, and then the props is image key string, change the functional component, change this to image key. So there's no export default. Let's take that out. Okay. So what does this guy need to do? It basically needs to get the image from storage. So let's add storage in here. Storage. So it needs to take the image key. It needs to get the image from storage. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create it to an object URL, and we're going to render that. So that's what this code does. So what's happening here is when the image key comes in, if I have an image key, we call the storage function and we get the image. We take the resulting blob from it, we create an object URL, and then we set the image URL with that. And then as you can see, what we're rendering is an image using the image URL with an alt key, also is with the alt also being the image key. If I don't have an image key, then I just render null. So let's see what we get. Let's do a hard. Okay, so so it looks like I'm not handling my error condition because it looks like this first URL can't be found. I probably need a better solution to handle that, but let's see. Let's see if I can. I hadn't accounted for this, but in my demo code. But let's see if I can find a quick solution to this. H E, and then. So if this kicks an error, then I really want my image key to be null. I don't think I could assign my image key. So let's say this, or let's set image URL to null. And then can I do this? Let's set this to any. Oh, let's be, yeah, any. Right? And then if I set my image URL to null, so I say if I have an image key and I have an image URL, then render it. See if that fixes my problem. All right, so I don't know who's throwing this. The promise async. I don't know why I'm catching this error. I don't know who's dumping it, but we've addressed the issue of kind of showing the image that doesn't exist. I can take a look into what's going on to that later. If anybody knows, leave a comment. But what I wanted to do was just address kind of, if I can't find the image, kind of what's going on. We probably want to have some sort of missing image to render, but that's outside of scope what we're trying to accomplish. So you can see we're able to render images when they are associated with the objects. And the final part that we need to do is we need the ability to actually edit the image that's associated with it, or edit an object when there's images associated with it. Because if you look at what we've done so far inside of Home, we've only accounted for adding the image on create. We need to be able to take these existing objects and actually add images to them if we want to. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, now that we have the ability to kind of create these new objects, render the images that are associated with them, the next thing we need to do is to actually be able to take an object that already, so like this object task 4, we can edit it. We want to be able to actually add an image to it. As I said, if you look at the source code here for handle close modal, we just handled a scenario where you're creating an image, right? I mean, where you're creating an entry. Updating objects is a little bit more complex because what needs to happen is that if I'm updating an object, there's a possibility that the object already has an image associated with it. So before I actually save the image, I need to remove the existing image. And so it's a little bit more of a two-step process. And since it's a little bit more complex, I'm going to extract out this. I think I'm going to extract out both of these. So let's go up here and say const update task, and then say value any. And this has to be async. We know, so let's async, async. And then let's take all this update code, take it out, and put it in here. And then we're going to return. All right, so this is how we're going to update a task. And so then what we do is we come down here, and in here we say, we pass in value, and say await update task. All right, and then let's do the same thing for create task. Const create task and async value and turn that. Let's put the other comment on there, and then let's go in and we can take all this code here for create. Take it all out of here and put it up in here inside of create, and then make sure we return. All right, and then down here, let's call await create task value. All right, so now we have those separated. All right, so what we want to do is we want to handle in here on the update task, how do you handle the scenario where there's already an image? So there's a couple of things you need to do. As I said, we have two steps. A, if an image already exists, we need to delete the original image, and then we need to add the new image. And then also notice on the bottom here, we need to make sure we set the image key on the task. Just as before, we need to keep track. We're going to need to keep track of the response from saving the file. But here's the other thing we want to do is we want to keep track of the image key. So what this will do here is if there's an image key in the original object, we're going to save that. So the starting point will be the new image key will be whatever the original image key is, right? Then the next thing we want to do after that, we want to determine if the object that's getting passed in has a new file or if it already has a key associated with it. And the trick we're going to use for that, we'll probably create a separate file to handle it, but in this scenario, we're going to make it real simple. What happens is that if the value that comes in has a file object, and if that file object has a last modified date, then I know I'm working with a file object, which means that the user has not edited, which means that the user has edited the task by selecting a new file. If the user hadn't selected a new file, then the file object would just be the image key, which is a string. And that string would not have a last modified property on it. So that's how I know that if I have a last modified property, then I have a new image. And if I have a new image to save, I need to check the original key to determine if I have to delete it. So I know I said a lot, but that's what's going on. And as I add the code, maybe it'll become clearer. So if I have a last modified, that means I have a new file. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save that new file. And we're going to save the new file the exact same way we saved the file before. We are going to take the file name from the object, we're going to URI encode it, and we're going to save it. And so now file save resp is going to have the new image key associated with it. So that's saving the new image. The other thing I need to do now is I also need to delete the old image. And remember, the old image we saved we have by default in the old image key. So the original image key is the old one, so now we're going to delete it. But first we'll check to see if there was one already. Because in the scenario we're using now, like here, there would be no old image. So if there's a key, then remove the old one. All right, and then the last thing that we want to do is we are going to set the new image key. And the new image key is what's going to get saved with the task object when we save it. So that's the new image key. So this is the scenario where, let me move this out here, we're saving new image. The other scenario we need to account for is if you basically want to remove or clear the image from the object. And so that's what this scenario accounts for, right? So let's kind of leave a comment here so we know what we're talking about here. So user cleared out the existing image. Okay. So in this scenario, I have an original image key, but I have no file value, meaning that the user cleared it out, so it's null. In this scenario, I actually just want to delete the original image and clear out the key. We are taking the original image key, we're removing it, and then we're clearing out the new image key. And then the last part, when we finally get done with managing image, we actually have to save everything. So that should handle all the different scenarios around modifying the image. So let's actually test them out. So let's kind of do a hard refresh. Let's start with this first scenario where on the edit, you can see I don't have an image associated with it. So let's select the file. Let's use this. So I have an image, and let's save it. And so you can see here on task 2, we have a new image associated with it, right? And so now I'm going to first show you the scenario where I actually update this image. So now let's select edit, let's select file. So this is a new image, save, and you can see it updated the image that was associated with it. And then the last scenario is where I actually clear the image out. Let's edit it. Oh, I missed the step. I apologize. I missed the step of managing the image when it gets passed into the entry form. So let's go over here and add that. So what's going to happen is on your initial values is a scenario where you can have the image, and we need to account for that. So let's account for that in my entry form. My bad. All right. So what we want to do is, if I have an image key, then I need to set it. So let's come in here. So if my initial value has an image key, then let's decode what the name is, and we'll set the current file to just a name. And then what we'll do is we're going to use that name object here to kind of render it in the label. So now you can see this. Let's cancel, go back. So now you can see when I edit, it has the original file saved with it. Also, let's show the scenario where I modify this and we still keep the same image. So let's say it's a wrap, keep image. So here I didn't change it. It's just a string, and when I save, I should see the exact same image. So I see the exact same image, but it updated the other stuff but did not update the image. And then I think the last scenario we want to show is where I actually clear the image out. So I can clear the image out, I can save, and now my image is gone. Okay, so those are the various scenarios. And then let's just show one last time where I can actually create a new task and it has the image. To make sure I didn't break anything. New task with image. This is sure I didn't break it. Select the file. Okay, let's open this guy. Let's save and add it to the bottom. Here's the final one. So this is, I believe, the end of the series. I showed you how to create objects, update objects, delete objects, add images to objects, and save those images to S3 buckets. So hopefully you found this beneficial. If there's something that you think is missing, please leave a comment. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and please share this content with your friends or anyone you think might enjoy this also. Thank you. Take care. Bye.